And back at it here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, Soren Petro with you. We're going to break it down. What do the Chiefs need? We've had the first wave of free agency. Really, all the big tickets have come and gone now in free agency. The draft is next, and then kind of the second wave of the older guys, the 1 and 2 year type deals that are going to be there. So how do the Chiefs stack up right now? What do their position groups look like? Quarterback, tight end, running back, wideout, O-line, D-line, linebacker, defensive backs on a scale of 1 to 10. What do they look like? We're going to break it down right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro was the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions. Project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience. With paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And welcome back. Another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast as we get you ready for the NFL draft. First, though, gentlemen, let's take a look at where this team is. They've addressed some of the needs. We know that offensive line was one of the big ones. Juwan Taylor, that move made. They brought in safety. They brought in linebacker. How ready are they for the draft? How much could they actually just draft the best position available? First of all, just real quick, Jeff, you know, is this team in good shape? I've seen everybody's doing that before we break it down position by position. Just real quick, are they in good shape right now for having the big wave of free agency over and looking at what they can get done in the draft?
I think that, look, they're in good shape as long as the quarterback and the coach are here, right? So that's always, you start there and you know that you've got a nice advantage in the NFL and you have that combination. So that gives you a head start right there. And really, this is the way they're going to have to do business moving forward, probably the rest of the Patrick Mahomes era, which is to say it's always going to look it's going to be fluid. Every year there's going to be changes, there's going to be new faces, there's going to be holes. And last year they did a good job of filling those holes through free agency and through the draft. And every player they pretty much got, I'd say probably 90% of the guys they got in the offseason contributed in some way to what this team became. So I think they're in good shape in terms of, we know they have talent, we know they have great quarterback, great coach. But, yeah, they've still got to go out and execute and find new faces.
Eric, you liking where they sit right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're the favorite to win the Super Bowl, overwhelming favorite to win the AFC West, which last year they were the favorite, but not overwhelmingly so. So I think that they've improved relative to their competition in the AFC. I think that the offseason has really given them, except for at wide receiver, a lot of flexibility with what to do, right? When, you know, you lose both tackles, Wiley and Brown, you bring in Juwan Taylor, and now, you know, on the other tackle, you're basically saying draft pick or Lucas Niang or earmuffs Petro, Devon Kennard, or, you know, somebody like that. And that's okay. You lose Juan Thornhill, you bring in Mike Edwards, you bring back Devin Bush, you're fine there. You even fortify a position that you didn't really need with Drew Tranquill at linebacker, and then on defensive line, you lose Frank Clark, you lose Kylan Saunders, but then you get back to Sean Wharton, you get in Charles Omenihu. You really put yourself in a position where that where that first round pick doesn't have to be one position, right? And you can sort of, no, I mean, they're not complete. They're not a complete team yet, but they're a team that I think you can really, with a draft, put yourself in a good position.
And I think, to be honest with you, it's going to be really hard for anybody other than Jeff Chadiha to be voted the MVP of this podcast, because as I scrolled through these comments, he managed to keep it together. I know he saw some of them. Like this. Can we get Eric's hair products as a sponsor? I need to try some. The hair, always a big topic, Eric, always a hit.
Doesn't it look good?
Yeah, that was from Brad. Nick says, Eric streaming from my old dorm room. You want to tell folks where you're at, or no? Is that?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, which is going to be my new home. I'm in an apartment right now because I'm looking for a new house. So yeah, I mean, I am in an apartment right now for the first time since 2000 and what would it be, 11? So yeah, I mean, I'm in an apartment for the first time since the Todd Haley years. Everybody.
Okay. Rhett said Eager looks like he's in the manager's office of a failing bar on Bar Rescue. You can confirm that that's not the case. You don't have like some kind of disco you're opening or something where they're going to come in and put a new concept together. No, you're good. You're good on that one.
Look, if I start a new business venture, I'm going to bring you two guys with me, right? Because this has been the only business venture I've started and this one's doing well. So I need to bring you two are my guys if I'm going to start my own business here.
I appreciate that. And then, real quick, Kevin DeTrucker, Eric, why don't you bring Super Sports to KC? Why you seem to be going the wrong direction?
I know. And look, if I would have stayed at PFF longer, I probably would have moved to KC, but ultimately Sumer came calling. So it ended up having to be Atlanta for me. But Atlanta was almost where the Chiefs had to play the AFC title game. So there is a connection there.
All right, let's talk about it on a scale of 1 to 10. We were going to just skip over quarterback and tight end and say they're really good there, but I think there's a little bit of perspective. Like the starting quarterback's at 10, but Jeff, do you go 10? We're not going to spend a lot of time on either one of these positions because we know having Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes makes them good spots, but like the backups and the future looks good at quarterback. Let's start there. But do you worry at all about the backups? Since let's be clear, Patrick Mahomes has been hurt a number of times in his career.
Yeah, well, Shane Buechele is not the answer. I mean, I'll feel pretty confident saying that right now, and what they do at that spot will be interesting because usually, I think in the previous years you probably felt like you needed to have a veteran like a Chadiha around because you could afford him for 1, and 2, he was good for the locker room, and 3, he was the kind of guy who can come in and play right away. And now you're getting to a place where most quarterbacks who are Mahomes level, his income, tend to have more developmental guys behind them. I'll be intrigued to see what they do, just because he does have a tendency to get nicked up, and they have been able to get some good play out of the backup quarterback position. But yeah, I think they'll find somebody for that role. I don't think Shane Buechele is going to be that guy.
Yeah, we all go 10 at quarterback. Then it doesn't matter. He's so good.
Yeah.
The backup part doesn't matter, Eric. We're all in for 10s on that.
The backup job matters a ton.
So do you not give the quarterback position a 10?
I give the quarterback position. Yeah, I mean, it's a 9, right? Because of the backup.
Okay. I give it a 10. I'm with Jeff because I'd like a better backup, but you're talking about, hey, I'm dating a playmate. She's only a blonde,
He just played through a high ankle sprain.
I mean, but is it like, can we pause it? Like, I know, like we're in a slow time of the offseason. We might want to explore this topic. Does Patrick Mahomes needs a good backup, right?
We have a lot of positions to cover. I don't know how long we need to grind on the backup to Patrick.
If they sign Teddy Bridgewater, they're a 10. Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Give Teddy Bridgewater $3 million over 1 year and let him come in and be a good mobile backup, good locker room guy, and then they're a 10. But like we've seen, like, and it doesn't, the bar's not that. Chad Henne's not a great quarterback, right? But he's
was it a 10 with Chad Henne?
Yes.
Really?
But Shane Buechele is like an XFL quarterback.
I can't help you. Well, I'm with you, Jeff. It is a 10, but I can't help you with it's a 10 with Henne and it's not with Buechele or whatever they might do. I don't think
it's 9.75. It's not because the Chiefs need a guy to come in and be 500 if Mahomes misses 2 games, right?
Here's what I don't get. I talk quarterbacks in the rankings, and you went to your phone to check out what was going on in your phone, and now you want to argue it for 10 minutes. It was like a quick hitter. Now you want to die on the mat. You weren't even intrigued by the subject. What do I got going on here?
Yeah.
And then now you're like, let's argue about.
I'm a vice president of a growing sports analytics company. Every once in a while, I'm trying to sign off on hiring interns right here. There are people's lives who their future in football analytics are at stake here. And yes, I did look down at my phone to see who of these interns that we were going to hire at Sumer Sports. So yes, I did look down for a second.
I didn't ask
I
what
still am allowed to do both.
Right.
You and my wife don't seem to think that I can multitask, but I certainly can. And I do have an opinion about I do have an opinion. They need a backup because Mahomes, by the virtue of the way he plays, gets banged up sometimes. And who knows if they win the 2 Super Bowls that they've won with backup quarterbacks that are worse than Matt Moore and Chad Henne.
Maybe it's just me that thinks you can't move on, but maybe your wife agrees too. I don't know. We'll maybe I'll discuss that with her one day. Let's talk about tight end. I think tight end is a little bit more dire because you can play multiple ones of them, and I don't see anybody. And when I say more dire, I think Travis Kelce is a 10 as a tight end, but I think there is a need to find some more depth there, Jeff. I will only go a 9 on the tight end spot. How do you view that?
I'd go there with you. I think Kelce is approaching that age. If you look at tight ends historically, the greatest tight ends, once they get close to 35, or 35 is the magic number. You look at Tony Gonzalez, you look at Jason Witten, you look at a guy like Gronkowski, Antonio Gates. That's when they start going off the cliff. And so, I think this is a pivotal year for Travis Kelce. He's been phenomenal for his entire career pretty much, but if he starts getting banged up and nicked up or slowing down, I tend to think like Noah Gray and Jody Fortson, those guys are a bit overrated. I think they're more schemed up than they are actually talented players. And, they kind of come in, they fade in and fade out. Now, part of that's Travis Kelce, his greatness, his brilliance. But I don't have a lot of trust that if he's not in the lineup, that collection of guys can make up for what he brings.
Yeah, Eric, where are you at?
They're at 10.
10 at tight end.
Yeah. Who is fifth on the Chiefs? Who is fifth on the Chiefs in receiving this year?
Well, I assume you just looked. I mean, I can take a quick look and answer that for you. Was it the backup tie? Was it Noah Gray?
Was Noah Gray?
18
Noah
passes?
Gray?
No, it was not.
He was fifth in receptions with 28, right? 28 receptions was fifth on the team, right?
Yeah, he was 6th in yards.
Okay,
and only 2 yards ahead of McCole Hardman, who was hurt half the year.
How many yards are we talking about? 300?
Come on. Why are you giving him so much credit? 299. Yeah.
So, okay, there's a couple things about the tight end position that are important to know. It's the position that takes the longest to grow in the league because offensive line is the second, because offensive line, you have to be bigger, faster, stronger, and it's like the biggest athletic mismatch in the league. And a tight end has to learn how to do that, and they have to learn how to catch. So Noah Gray's in year 3. I thought that the improvement from year 1 to year 2 was pretty damn good for Noah Gray. I think that if you say, okay, and this is a team that ran 2 or 3 tight ends on a lot of 3rd and longs. Like you look at the Bengals playoff game, and that there was that sort of like second almost hook and ladder. That was a 3rd and 17, and they were in 3 tight ends. Like this is a team that uses their tight ends, and I think that there's signal in the fact that Reed likes those guys. Fortson, I think, has a lot of ability. I agree with Jeff. I think he's a little overrated, but as your 3rd tight end, I think he's more than okay. So I think it's a 10. I think Kelce still has some years left on him. I think the Chiefs do a good job of limiting. I think the Chiefs get, they do a good job of not overburdening him. And I think he's also kind of like the body type to stay healthy, clearly. And I think Gray is a starter in this league.
All right. I don't know that puzzles me.
I won't go that far with it.
Yeah. You think Noah Gray's a starter in this league? That's a stretch.
Yeah. He's back on the phone now.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm not on the phone.
He's making his piece and then he's piecing out. All right. Running back. Where do we go at running back? It's a position that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still on the team. We know that they got great production from the 7th rounder Isaiah Pacheco, and they've been able to kind of plug and play. Jeff, what kind of grade do you go at running back?
I go 6. And I thought 5, but I want to give Pacheco some love because he played well. I just think he's going to start getting hurt. I think the way he plays, the way he runs, he's going to start getting banged up. And what's left behind him is not all that exciting. He's not a great pass catcher. I feel like if you looked at what they had last year, it was a great mix with Jerick McKinnon being a part of that. And maybe they find that kind of running back again. I feel like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, given what happened at the parade, given the way his season played out, I just don't know if his head is really in being a part of this team anymore. I think he's a good dude. I think it's not his fault he was a first-round pick. But if you ask me about that combination, those two guys being their backfield when the season started, I wouldn't be super excited about it.
Okay, Eric?
4.
Wow. So you're not that high on Pacheco then?
By the way, I just got a text message from somebody. I was looking at my phone. Somebody said, "You're doing a great job. Tell Petro to STFU." It was a good text from my friend who's watching the show.
That's your mom?
Or
quote unquote friend.
I need all the reinforcement I need because the gallery over here is anti-eager. I need all the people in my corner that I can get. So 4, because Pacheco's a good player. I was wrong about him for sure. Clyde's not going to be on this team come September. They're going to cut him. They're going to trade him for like a 7th round pick. He stinks. Ronald Jones is gone. McKinnon's not here yet. You can't assume he's going to come back. Derek Gore, whatever, you squint. He had and so on and so forth. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And like we've seen it, like there have been running backs that have come through this building that like Charkandrick West was good for a year. Spencer Ware was good for a year. Damian Williams was good for a year. And like, that doesn't mean anything, right? Like that, like year to year the running back position is like kind of up and down, and there's injuries, of course. And the way that Pacheco runs, he might get injured because of how hard he runs and how like how sturdy of a player he runs like. So
I don't know that they all can get injured, right? I mean, like then Patrick Mahomes, then how can you Travis Kelce can get injured? I mean, that can't be part of the
equation. But okay, there's different, like
not now.
Isaiah Pacheco being a second-year running back, I'm going to regress him to the average of all running backs, which are guys that get hurt a lot. Then I'm going to regress Travis Kelce, a 10-year tight end, to the mean, right? So that's not fair. I think the fact is like if you're going into the year with Pacheco and a bunch of vibes, like I'm going to say that that's not great.
I will say that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is better than you're giving him credit for. I'm with Jeff. I'll ding that a little bit because I don't know where his head is, if he wants to be on this team or what's going on. I asked around. Nobody really wanted to answer about where Clyde Edwards-Helaire was on, during the parade and everything, which to me says that they don't like the answer that would come out of their mouth. That's what it says to me. At least that's my history of it. I think Isaiah Pacheco is really good. And I think Edwards-Helaire is serviceable, whether he's there or not. Again, I think they'll add to this in the draft somewhere, or again in free agency. LaMichael Pirine is on this roster as well. I mean, that's filler, but I don't think it needs a lot. But again, they can live with a 3 or 4 grade on the running back. But I'm with Jeff. I give more credit. I give more credit to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I did pick him for 1,500 yards, scrimmage yards. So that makes me a moron. I'll go 6 on the running back spot, almost all exclusively on Isaiah Pacheco. I think he's more like a 7 grade. He needs to get better at pass blocking. He needs to get better as a receiver if he's going to enter that upper echelon. But he brings a physicality, a toughness to this team that I think is important. So I will go 6 at the running back position. I think it's a little better than it might look, even though it's thin. But I do get the weaknesses that are there, and I get the weaknesses that are there for Pacheco. It's not deep. That's for sure. I mean, it's pretty much Isaiah Pacheco, and you're looking for help unless Clyde Edwards-Helaire can bounce back in a big way. How about wideout? I can't wait to see how this goes. Eric, you want to take the first stab at wide receiver? What are you going on a 1 to 10 for wideout?
4.
Okay.
I mean, Valdez-Scantling's the starter in the NFL. Everybody else is a question mark.
I mean, no upside.
Oh, there's tons of upside. But
There
the
is?
average is a 4.
There's tons of upside.
Yeah. Kadarius Toney's the top 25 pick in the NFL.
Okay.
Sky Moore is a top 50 pick in the NFL. There's tons of upside.
Okay.
You know,
but you obviously are not like throwing your cards down saying it's going to be real.
I'm not going to put my rent on this wide receiving core as being a top half of the league receiving core, but they didn't have a top half of the league receiving core in 2022.
Right. That's
and they won the Super Bowl as predicted. But they got worse. They lost Juju, and I think there's glimpses of this thing working, right? When wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4 were out in the AFC title game. Valdez-Scantling played the deep guy role and the Juju role, and with the great aplomb. When Juju was out against the Chargers, Sky Moore had a great game. Like there's evidence that some of these guys, their production wasn't as good because there were players in their way, right? But there's also injuries with Toney. There's injuries with Sky Moore. And Valdez-Scantling was healthy all of last year, but he wasn't healthy his final year in Green Bay. So there's a lot of uncertainty with the wide receivers. And with, it's you're wearing red and gold, red, gold, and bold colored glasses if you give them anything more than a 5, I think, right?
Yes, wholeheartedly. I mean, Jeff, you went next, Rick. I don't want to make everybody go before me. I'll go next if you want to hear my side of the story.
Sure.
All right. I'll take the fact that Sammy Watkins would be unquestionably the number 1 wide receiver on this team right now. I think Sammy Watkins is more accomplished than Marquez Valdez-Scantling, certainly could run more routes, and I think that scares the crap out of me. And, when I hear Eric ring up where the receivers were when the injuries were piling up, they narrowly survived that, right? Like that game is the payback for how they narrowly lost to the Bengals, right? Like this is it. This is the yin and yang. They were good enough to win it either year. A couple plays were the difference against the Bengals. There were only a couple plays that were the difference that time, and getting by with how banged up they are. And I do think that there's work to be done. I get it. Patrick Mahomes is the great difference maker. I'm all in on that. As much as I was criticized for still wanting Laramie Tunsil after Jawan Taylor, if you had an offensive line that I'm like, they're not getting by this. This was the Vermeil offensive line. I'd feel better about where the receiving core is. Flip side is if the receiving core was Tyreek Hill, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Juju Smith, like the best of the best, I'd feel better about having problems on the offensive line. As it turns out, it's down there on the wide receiving core. It's better on the offensive line than being brutal.
Did you see Sammy Watkins last year in Baltimore?
I'm talking about Sammy Watkins.
He looks like he spent a week in Atlanta like me, eating all this fried food like I have.
I know you weren't paying attention. I'm talking about Sammy Watkins when he played with the Chiefs. All right. So when he played with the Chiefs, he was better than that. He could run all the routes. He filled in different ways. There isn't a guy like that. Valdez-Scantling can't do it all. I agree. He stepped up for one game, and maybe he'll prove me wrong. But I say brilliance on Patrick Mahomes, brilliance on Andy Reid, but I don't think they can do that week in, week out. So you go 4, I'll go even lower, Eric. I'll go at 3 on the wide receiving core, and I'm tempted to go 2, but I'll go 3.
2?
Jeff, I'm tempted. I'm going 3.
Didn't you just say like 4 would nobody could go higher than 4? So 2 is like 2.
Yeah, I know.
2 spots off.
Yeah,
you're freaking out.
Yeah.
I'll go 3. I'll go 3. I'm with you. I was going to go 3, and for a lot of the same reasons. It's just no matter how great your quarterback is, there is a tipping point if you don't have enough talent around him on the outside. And I know Travis Kelce is a great player, but I look at Aaron Rodgers what he was throwing to. I look at Tom Brady when he still had Rob Gronkowski, but he was also throwing to some guys who weren't that good. And he lost Julian Edelman, and the offense changed, and they became a lot easier to defend. And that's It's funny how coaches who are as great as Andy Reid, because there is a tendency. John Gruden was this way. Like, I'll just take the guy and make him great. Once he gets over here, I'll turn him into something. And I think it's fine to do that sometimes, but you don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with that philosophy, because Juju Smith was a huge, huge contributor to this team last year. And he was a contributor because he had been a good player somewhere else. He'd put up the numbers. And when, you look at some of the guys who played the best at that spot all year long, he was the one who stood out because he, had a feel for the game, wasn't the fastest guy in the world, but knew where to be, good chemistry with Mahomes. And so where's that guy going to come from now? That's my bigger concern is for this team is what are the options to fill that kind of void? Because the other guys we're talking about here are okay in spurts, but you need to have somebody you trust for your quarterback, especially when you don't have a guy like McKinnon around to ease the pressure as well.
Can I just, and I agree with you, Jeff, but I do think Smith-Schuster's contribution to this team was maybe a little bit overstated. Like, if you look at week 9 on, the Chiefs lost one game from week 9 on, and it was 33 yards against Jacksonville, 0 yards against the Chargers, 38 yards against the Rams, 35 yards against the Bengals, 74 yards and a touchdown against Denver, good, 88 yards against Houston, 27 yards against Seattle, 21 yards against Denver, 35 yards against Las Vegas.
Eric, we get it.
9 yards against Jacksonville,
we
7 yards against Cincinnati.
Eric, we got it. We got it. The
Yeah.
point is he's still out there and he's still a threat. And when they needed a big drive in the Super Bowl, they went to him 5 out of 7 passes. So no one here is putting them at a 1 and saying he would make them a 10. I'm not sure what the point is of that diatribe, but Juju Smith-Schuster is better than anybody that's on this roster right now at playing wide receiver.
I think that we're holding him up like he's Isaac Bruce, and we can't see Sky Moore getting 35 yards against Cincinnati. He can do it. I think that's my opinion.
I don't get how you can prop up Noah Gray.
That's right. And kill.
Talk about Juju. Noah Gray.
Yeah.
You want to hear the stats on Noah Gray? Because they're a wart on the ass of the numbers you just ran off on Juju Smith-Schuster. All right, and I don't
Noah
understand.
Gray is the second tight end behind a future Hall of Fame player.
Listen,
yes,
I have said this. They played lots of tight ends, and they would play more. Obviously, if the wideouts are so piss poor, then there's nothing but opportunity for him to get out there. Listen, I've said this many times in my life. I don't care what the rules are, long as we're all going to play by them. And your rules vary based upon whatever the narrative is. I mean, you cannot prop up Noah Gray and then dump on Juju Smith-Schuster. You want to say they're both Jags? I'll listen to that. You want to say they're both a little better than Jags, or either one of them is? I'll listen to that. You want to trumpet one and say the other sucks? You've lost your mind. There's no.
My bar for number 2 tight end is different than my bar for wide receiver 1. Correct.
But they don't. So what's your bar for wide receiver 2? Because Travis Kelce's the 1 and Juju's the 2.
Higher than my bar for tight end 2. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
So he's calling Sky Moore right now is putting up Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju had 70 catches, 900 yards last year. Is that what it was? Right.
70 for 900. Okay. Listen, I want to believe that. I like Sky Moore. Sky Moore's not near as big. I'm going to tell you, it's father and son when they walk through the locker room, and he's not going to be used the same way. He can't be because
There's a thing called food, Petro, and the weight room. There's a wide receiver
There's 5 inches difference between those two. I mean, and there's the catch radius. There's the catch radius. I've been in the locker room. Juju Smith-Schuster is not fat.
Petro's doing some grass to me.
No,
right now.
but you can't help but notice when a guy walks right in front of you and he's not wearing a shirt. And Jeff has talked about, I wonder how big he is. You're like, well, all right. He's
I'm not saying Juju's. Juju had a great year last year. He deserves a ring. I think he was very good, especially early in the season. But they got better offensively down the stretch of the season, and he did not increase his contribution to the football team. That is an underrated part. We were talking about Juju making 15 to 20 million midseason, and he signed for 11.
I think there is a point where you fall off a cliff, right? Like there's the law of diminishing returns. And it's one thing, Juju looks better, sure, with Randy Moss in his prime on the other side. They all do, right? I think, and they all look better when they are down a notch. We're talking about bumping them all up a notch, and I think it gets scary. But I don't know. We're arguing over the difference between Eric, you going a 4, and Jeff and I going a 3.
Yeah.
So I don't.
That's right.
I mean,
we're in the same boat.
This is called content, Petro.
Yeah.
We can't just nod. Somebody's got to pick the Eagles to lose to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Uh,
Somebody's got to.
I bow. I give you the props. All right, let's talk about the offensive line. Eric, where do you go on the offensive line now?
7.
Okay.
I think the Chiefs have the best interior offensive line in all of football. And I think one of the 2 tackles is good. And there's a huge question mark at one of the other tackles.
Okay. Jeff?
I mean, that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, I'm at 6. I don't like what they have at right tackle right now. I reserve the right to change that depending on what kind of moves they make, either in the draft or later on in the offseason. And I just don't know if the left tackle can play left tackle. I mean, it's very possible that he could be a better option than Orlando Brown Jr. because he's more athletic. But again, until you're actually doing it, I'm not going to give you that kind of love. So if they were stronger at one of those tackle spots, I'd probably be in an 8. But it's just, I think the uncertainty there makes me a little more squeamish.
I'm gonna have to go before Jeff more often because it's sounding like I'm just a sounding board from what Jeff's grades are, but I have them all down here already. And I go a 6 as well. 6 because I agree with what Eric said, that the interior is rock solid and maybe the best in football, right? Because I think Creed Humphrey's great. Tooney's very good. Trey Smith is very good. I think there's a lot to like that, but I think tackles are more important. And I think Lucas Yang or Darian Kennard or whatever is going to line up there at right tackle is a big problem, right? Because Yang can't stay healthy, never has. And that means you're, 3 games away from Kennard being out there. And I'm completely not to
worst nightmare. Yeah.
It is my worst nightmare right now. Now and I said this on the radio the other day. I am completely open to the idea that I will go out to St. Joe and I will watch the Chiefs, and that Darian Kennard will find out, had his knee scoped, cleaned something up, and he's moving a lot better. I've heard some people kind of rumble around that maybe he was dinged up. Maybe there was some surgery of some kind that should have been done. So I'm optimistic that I'm going to see Darian Kennard move better. He was voted the SEC Lineman of the Year, for God's sake. He did something right at Kentucky. I just did not see it at St. Joe. People were telling me he was better coming at the end. I think people were just trying to do a sales job. I'm fine with Juwan Taylor at left tackle. As Eric's always said, like if Juwan Taylor's at left tackle with Mitchell Schwartz, I feel pretty good. Well, I don't know where you help. And I think Juwan Taylor might need some help on passing downs. I do think there's ceiling on Taylor that perhaps is not untouched. So that is untapped perhaps. And so I'm optimistic that maybe they can get there better. But, the tackle spot is really important. And I think it opens up a lot of things. I mean, I think we may one day look back at this season and go, that was the greatest quarterback and coaching combination season that ever was. I think if Orlando Brown flames out and gets cut by the Bengals in 2 years, we're like, dude, how good was he? Because he's not old. It's not like he's old when he got there. I think if the Chiefs move on from Tooney in a year, and I think there's a lot of different things. Juju Smith kind of flames out. Patriots end up cutting him after 2 years, and we look back and go, they patched that together. I mean, half that offense was out of the league in 2 years, and they patched that together into a Super Bowl. I think it's entirely possible we saw one of the greatest offensive coaching jobs ever, because I went through these grades. I'm like, I'm not blown away by these grades.
That's right. Tim Grunhard is on your show all the time. He would tell you this: offensive line is a unit. It's a chemistry thing. And so the more you have guys playing together, longer period of time, the better they're going to play. It's just, that's my thing. When you've got new faces on the edge, it's, like someone just mentioned, Andrew Riley, like he's been in this program for a few years. So he knows what to expect. And so Orlando Brown was in his second year here. So you're talking about, I've never, if Lucas Niang walked down the street right now in front of my house, I wouldn't know who he was, and Darian Kennard is certainly somebody you've been down on. It's just, again, let's remember, as great as this team was last year, they won their last 2 games on the last 2 plays being penalties and last-second field goals. Like, it wasn't like they just ran away and hid from everybody. So these kind of little things, little position things, do matter a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the number one thing to take. Like, it was funny because, somebody was like, oh, nothing matters because Mahomes. I'm like, no, like, don't let the Chiefs, don't let the fact that Mahomes is here, like, cloud us from learning a lot of lessons, right? Like, Jeff was absolutely right. Like, this team nailed the draft. They have the greatest quarterback in the league, one of the best head coaches in the league. And it took beating the Eagles by 3 and the Bengals by 3 in the playoffs and a 1-score win against Jacksonville to win the Super Bowl. And, it's not easy. I would say leave open the possibility of Juwan Taylor playing right tackle.
Okay. I would love that. I think that'd be a great thing. I'll tell you what. Go ahead.
Who's playing left then?
Well, he's got him drafting somebody, I think. Am I reading that?
I mean, I think here's the thing about Juwan Taylor that to open it up. Juwan Taylor is open to playing right tackle.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's part of what got him signed. And I think that's part of what
he's making. Like, think about this. He's not making top of the market deal for left tackle because he's not a left tackle. Like, they're making him one, but they're giving him top, besides Lane Johnson, they're giving him right tackle money. Like, if he stays at right tackle, he can puff his chest out and be like, I'm one of the highest paid players at this position in the whole league. Right. So there's a lot, and I'm playing for a Super Bowl caliber team. Like, we all get stunted by Orlando Brown because the guy was obstinate about playing left tackle. That's not the case with Juwan Taylor from what I'm hearing.
And I think it's a big part of what he said it as much, right? Sure. Orlando Brown immediately said, I'm here to play left tackle. Juwan Taylor said, I'll play wherever they want me to play.
Here's my check.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they were willing to back the truck up for him because what Jeff said and he was quoting Tim, the line's a unit. If the best unit requires Juwan Taylor to play right tackle, then I'm assuming the guy will do that after playing for a terrible football team in Jacksonville for 4 years.
The Red Gold and Bold podcast is always brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They are proudly serving the entire metro area. Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Whatever problem you might have with your parking lot, whatever maintenance you might need, they can do it. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. That's 816-484-3338 online at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Make sure you tell them if you call, if your business needs any kind of work that you heard about them here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast. Guys, let's switch our attention over to the defensive side. Let's start with the big boys up front, D-line. Jeff, what are you grading 1 to 10 on D-line?
I'll go 8 here, which maybe a little high, but I'll give Chris Jones his love, his due. The question is, and someone mentioned this in the comment section, is like, what's going on with his deal? Because if he's not paid, maybe it's a different Chris Jones we see, this coming year. But I think, the way he played last year, if he's doing that, I think you're allowing for some growth from Karlaftis. You expect Omenihu to be what he was in San Francisco. Whoever else is in that group, Noddy, I think Danny Shelton should have been. I think he's still on the roster. Wharton. I mean, you can mix and match other guys in there, but I think they've got some flexibility, some versatility, and they've got one of the top 3 or 4 defensive players in the league on that line. So I'll go 8.
Okay. Eric?
6. I think Chris Jones is a fantastic player. We saw him at the very top last year. We've seen him. Like, what if you get an average Chris Jones year? Like, average for him?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
it goes down. I agree.
Yeah. So that's a question because I think he'll get signed. And so then the question is about motivation. And that's not an offensive question about Jones. It's been a real thing for him. Omenihu's a projection. I'm optimistic, but you don't have a starting defensive tackle next to Jones that's a good player in the league. Noddy stinks. Wharton's coming off of a season-long injury. all the other guys that Jeff talked about, like Michael Dana is a defensive end that's playing tackle on pass downs. Karlaftis is an okay player so far. I don't think I think you have to draft another guy at defensive end to really complete that group. So I think 6. Not terrible, not great.
I guess I'm smack dab in the middle of you two. I have him down as a 7, largely on Chris Jones, but I think there are good support guys and there's upside with George Karlaftis. Did he, sacks kind of come in bunches? Like, was his pressure rate really the same? And, if we sprinkle those 6.5 sacks out over the whole year, we're like, all right, pretty good, but it's the 6.5 and 7 games that you go, all right, here we go. Right. Is this guy going to be a 10 sack guy on a regular basis? Now they start to look a little bit better. And I do look, if we look over the horizon, Chris Jones is only signed for 1 more year until we hear that there's been an extension, which I think the less we hear, the more I think that's in the works with Chris Jones. I like Derek Nottie. Emenehu is a piece that's, I think valuable because he can I think he'll play well within Spagnuolo's scheme, but I have no thought of him ever touching 10 sacks. I mean, I think, like, well, he was a part-time guy. He had 4.5 sacks. Part-time guy for a reason, right? Like Eric talked about developing that tight end. And I think it's funny. It's the position he played, but tight end is a position that needs the most time to develop. Well, D-line isn't, right? Like there's a lot of
wasn't given enough time. I just ran out of time, Petro.
Yeah. There's I like that. You'd have been in the league. You might be the second tight end right now if there'd been more patience. D-line though is an athlete position, and so I don't think Emenehu is going to become a 10 sack guy, right? I don't see that coming. So I like what they have. I think it's serviceable. I think it's all about Chris Jones, and it gets pretty thin without him at that point. Steve Spagnuolo has to get real crafty at dialing something up, and so. It's a position of need somewhere along that defensive line because I think Emenehu can kind of swing, and I think Dana does a good job. They've got a good mix of versatile guys, but it only works with Chris Jones there. Yeah. And I think I also don't go as high as an 8, and I thought strongly about the 6. When you're bringing Derek Nottie back, there's an element of fear because. His performance doesn't say that he needs to be brought back. His performance says you can find Derek Nottie on the free agent market in August anytime you want, right?
Out of the league the way he was going, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that they re-signed him has me quite puzzled and has me thinking that they're afraid of the unknown when they make that move, that they're like, we need some more bodies when they go get him. All right, Eric, where are we at on linebacker with you?
6.
Oh, okay. Why?
So Willie Gay is, I think, a little overrated by the fan base. I think he's never been able to play a full game for this team ever. I watched the Super Bowl the other day just because I was having a bad day. So I just turned the Super Bowl on, and 47, a guy, Darius Harris, that they didn't even tender, was playing snaps in that game. Because Willie Gay can't play a whole game. I think Nick Bolton's one where I sort of believe the PFF grades that he's really productive and really good, but there are other people who think that he's kind of that there's a little bit of like that soccer player who the only reason he gets a slide tackle is because he's out of position, right? And so I like Drew Tranquil. I've not, haven't really studied him a ton, but I think he's got some. And I think that in the role that Leo Chanel plays, he's fine. But none of those guys, to me, elevate the group slightly above average for me.
All right. Eric or Jeff, where are you?
Yeah, I'm in the same place. I would go 6 for a lot of the same reasons. Willie Gay, to me, has never lived up to his potential. I mean, he's a great athlete, but he just seems like there's a lot of plays where he's just in the wrong spot, or games when he just doesn't really do any whole lot. And I think Drew Tranquil's a better football player than Willie Gay is. I think that can end up showing up in the snaps they get over the course of this year. I still remember the Willie Gay play that sticks out to me is that Houston Texans game when he was spying Davis Mills and ended up like getting impatient and rushing in, and Mills goes right around the corner and scores on a 20-yard run scramble. That to me epitomizes the downside of Willie Gay. He makes some big splash plays, but I just think he's just an average linebacker at best. And I think Nick Bolton has gotten a huge bump because of the run defense and because of all the animosity towards Anthony Hitchens. But I think when you get further away from that situation with Hitchens when he was playing over him, great run defender, mediocre pass defender. Again, I think Tranquil is a nice upgrade, a nice pickup, and we'll get some depth. I mean, maybe Chanel gets more of a role in this coming season, but I think overall, I think they're just above average.
3 passes defense, 2 interceptions, forced a fumble, and 180 tackles while wearing the green dot and lining everybody up, and was a significantly better pass defender than Anthony Hitchens. Nick Bolton is not overrated. Nick Bolton belonged in the Pro Bowl. Nick Bolton is being underrated on this podcast right now. Nick Bolton kicks ass, all right? And I think the guy's a stud. I think he...
You think he's like Roquan Smith level?
No.
Fred Warner level?
Roquan's more of like the cover, a pure cover guy. I mean, Bolton, listen, when you draft Bolton, you're not saying we're getting Derek Brooks or we're getting,
Lance Briggs.
Yeah, I mean, just like the ultimate cover guy. Who's that 5'10" linebacker?
You're getting Tracy Simeon.
No. You're getting better than Tracy Simeon.
Yeah,
you're getting better than. You don't think he's better than Tracy Simeon?
I thought Tracy Simeon was a damn good linebacker for this team.
Hey, nobody's saying he sucks. I think he's just.
We're calling him a 6, Petro. This is a 6, and Willie Gay.
You're calling the position a 6, and then you're running down Willie Gay. So I'm assuming you're calling Nick Bolton better than a 6. If you're calling Nick Bolton a 6 at middle linebacker,
I'm calling.
Yeah, I'll say Nick Bolton's a 7,
an 8, not a 10, the way that like everybody else is. But Willie Gay's the one that kind of sucks, and they're bringing Drew Tranquil in, but we don't know he's going to start. Spagnuolo has always played some player, So Bolton's like a 7 or 8 out of 10. He's a good player, but
so anyway,
the rest of the linebacker crew drags him down a little bit, right?
So anyway, yeah, because I think I have not seen a whole lot out of Chanel.
Chanel's fine in his role, but that's a limited role in the NFL.
I haven't seen a whole lot out of him. I do like the addition of Tranquil a lot. I think he's better than the 37 grade. But what I saw now, maybe I'm, completely, I don't know, thinking too much of just the games against the Chiefs, right? But he was a difference maker when I watched him play against the Chiefs. So I like the addition of Tranquil, and I think that solidifies either lights a fire under Willie Gay or replaces Willie Gay, and they're better. I put a lot on Nick Bolton. I give him an 8 at linebacker. I think it's one of the strengths of the team. I think there's depth there. I still
think the linebackers an 8 total.
Yeah, I give linebackers an 8. I give linebackers an 8 for sure.
I think Simeon, 84 career starts with the Chiefs. 4 interceptions,
got on Wikipedia.
4 sacks, 504 tackles back when they didn't really call
Nick Bolton's almost halfway there in one season. In one season. And he's not playing in a league. He's not playing in a league where they run the ball on every goddamn down. Yeah. Tracy Simeon just lined up against everybody who ran the ball every time. You've got listen, I'm going to hold you to this for the rest of your natural born life, Eric. If you're going to sit here and continue to act like Nick Bolton is Tracy Simeon, or I'm going to call you a punk kid who never watched Tracy Simeon play.
I watched Tracy Simeon play. You don't think I've watched
there is no comparison between those two. Nick Bolton plays downhill. He provides a physicality this defense doesn't have without him. He's the only one who consistently brings that to the equation. The second best guy was Juan Thornhill, and he's gone. So Nick Bolton, I don't know what. There's not even close.
You said, what about Juan Thornhill, Petro? We got to calibrate this.
He was like the second most physical player on that defense. Who else is more physical?
Chris Jones wasn't as physical?
You consider Chris Jones to be
L'Jarius Sneed wasn't more physical?
No, L'Jarius Sneed is actually getting knocked out of the game. You know what physical means?
You gave Jeff tuberculosis with that.
That's right.
Look, here's Tommy, who hates everything any of us ever say. Tracy Simeon was
that's
No.
the whole point.
Oh,
there. It is. It's
He doesn't
over.
play the
he
pass.
hates everything I say, which is why he's going on your side. Currently different. Look, I like Nick Bolton. I really do. And I think he should have the green dot. I said he's an 8. I was just a Tracy Simeon lover because that was the time and place. We don't know what Tracy Simeon would have been like had they played all those passing plays.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Is Nick Bolton Derek Johnson?
No. They're different, right? Like they're different in the sense that Derek Johnson was a shoot the gap, bring a guy down for a 2-yard loss, but Derek Johnson was not taking on any linebacker or any offensive lineman. I mean, he was a speed get there guy. I love Derek Johnson. Love to have them both. Derek Johnson also had the ability to play in or out. Nick Bolton played outside, but really was out of position playing outside his first year. He needs to be inside. That's where he needs to play. He's a different kind of linebacker. And we're also looking at
8. Everybody got pissed. Okay.
all right, let's go to defensive backs.
By the way, Pro Football Reference approximate value: Nick Bolton, the 6 in the rookie year, 7 last year. Tracy Simeon, 6'8", 6'7", 10'7". Those are the same numbers.
Pro Football Focus was not grading players when Tracy Simeon was playing. So whatever after the fact grenade lob they did, I'll object to. Let's go to the defensive backs. Jeff, what do you give the DBs?
I don't know. I'm probably 6. Maybe
6,
maybe 7. I could go as high as 7. I don't know. I'm kind of torn.
One or the other.
Yeah, I'll go 6.
Okay,
I'll go 6. I mean, just because I think there's a potential to be a 7 with some more growth in there. I think Justin Reed was not. I think he was okay last year. He didn't really blow me away. Snead obviously is a talented player, a Pro Bowl guy with versatility to him. McDuffie, I like McDuffie a lot coming out, and I think just being banged up, and I think he can be a Pro Bowl level player as he grows. And then the other guys, it's an okay group. I guess I'm betting a lot on McDuffie's upside and maybe Snead continuing to play at a high level, but the safeties don't really blow me away.
Eric?
A 7 floor. I would say 7.5 is where I lean. Here's my reason. L'Jarius Sneed is what we wanted. L'Jarius Sneed is basically what Tyrann Mathieu was when they won the Super Bowl. But he can play outside corner. McDuffie can play inside, outside as well. That's a huge combination. Whichever, like for the next 4 years, they can play basically whoever is hot between Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson. That's a really big advantage. Najee Johnson, we haven't even seen play yet, but has potential coming out of Marshall, made the team. And then you have 4 safeties, all of whom are pretty good football players. Mike Edwards was a ball hawk in Tampa. Justin Reed was very good. I think like all of our intuition that when you play for Houston, you should throw out that data was fairly supported this year. Reed plays a really good box safety in the dime, which you really like. That he was, I thought, pretty damn good last year. And then, from there, like I just think that this is, and then Brian Cook, I think, is going to emerge and be a better player than he was a season ago. So I think this is a very good secondary.
I think the combination of Snead and McDuffie is this year going to be, and I think last year at times when they were both healthy was one of the best corner combinations in football. And I think it's one of the real better kept secrets as to why this team won. I think they're good. They're very good. And I think when you watch a corner all year on one team, and I think, Jeff, you might be the best at giving this perspective because you travel around, you're at different games. You're not just grinding through one team all the time. I think you can do one of two things. You either fall in love with a guy and you decide, you quit looking at his weaknesses and you just celebrate every one of the great plays, or you just harp on all the weaknesses. You see their warts, and corner's a position that gets beat. And I think we want perfection out of that. I think local people grade their corners down, right? More than they should, because when they have a mistake or they get beat, it's a big play. And so you're like, this guy sucks. But it's like everybody gives that stuff up. I mean, Jalen Ramsey was abused at times. You'd watch national TV games, and it wasn't all his fault. The Rams had issues. Then you look at it, and you're like, wait a minute. What the hell? Like, Jalen Ramsey's number 3 corner at PFF. I think their corners are pretty good. I think there's depth at safeties. I'm not as high on how good the safeties are. as Eric is. I don't know that there's a ton of versatility there, but I think to your point, Jeff, on the extra corners, they're not great, but they're good as third and fourths, right? That's why I think okay. They were asked to be 1 and 2. It'd be like, Eric Warfield. How come he's not shutting this guy down? Well, he's a 7th round pick out of Nebraska. That was a corner safety hybrid that you asked to be your number 1 corner. Shame on you for asking him to do too much. When Snead and McDuffie are healthy, nobody has to do too much. And the secondary looks pretty good. I give it a 7 on my book, but I kind of like the Eric 7 floor because I could get them to an 8, but it's the safety spot that holds me back. I think they're limited at the safety spot. That's just where I'm at. So that gives us kind of a perspective on where the Chiefs should go in the draft. Hopefully you scored along at home. You can figure out what the Chiefs' needs are based on what we came up with. Wide receiver is the most glaring need for this team still in free agency and in the draft, which doesn't shock us. But offensive line doesn't seem to be in any worse shape, which is another place that people would have talked about, than defensive back, than linebacker, than it's a little worse off than obviously quarterback, tight end, but also D-line. But it's better off than running back. So I think that might be kind of one of the surprising things if we were the 3 lieutenants for Brett Veach, giving him information to go into this NFL draft. That's going to do it for us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. We take both our podcasts here on usually Tuesday night. We're doing it on a Wednesday night this week. So if you catch us via the podcast, usually Tuesday nights at 8. We followed up with our NFL podcast, Too Deep. That's coming up next. Our podcast brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They're hiring right now for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, paid time off, and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. That's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. We'll see you next time on the Red, Gold, and Bold.